Alright, Algebra 1, we're doing one-step inequalities today. Let's kick some butt! Alright, so if we go on to our notes, we can see the top is talking about inverse operations, which you guys already know about because we already did solving equations. So if you can solve equations, you can solve inequalities, okay? Keep in mind we've got inverse operations. Whatever that means is if you are adding something, to get rid of it is subtract. If you are subtracting something, you add to get rid of it. And keep in mind, if you're multiplying to get rid of it, you divide. And if you're dividing to get rid of it, you multiply. You're always doing inverse operations. Okay, so let's just go ahead and move on to number 1. So we've got x plus 3 is greater than 4. Well, remember, I want to get my x by itself. And I can do that by moving everything else over. So I've got this plus 3. Well, remember, if I'm doing inverse operation, I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. So I have x left over. I've got my greater than or equal to sign, and 4 minus 3 gives me 1. Okay, well, I have that answer. Now let's go ahead and transfer it to my number line. So remember, I start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Negative 5. So here's my number line. Next thing to determine if it's an open or closed circle. And we can see for in this problem, we have a line under where we have that equal to. And because it has that equal to, we're doing a closed circle. Next thing we're doing is we're plugging in 0 for x. So it's saying 0 is greater than or equal to positive 1, which is false. So we're going that direction. You do not want to include 0. You want to include the numbers that are bigger than 1, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 all those. Okay, so let's jump to number 2. We're going to do that same process. If I have x minus 15 and I want to get rid of it, I need to add on both sides. So plus 15 on both sides. So I've got x. My 15s cancel out. I've got my greater than sign. And I've got negative 12 plus 15, which is 3. Well, now let's go ahead and transfer that to my number line. So let's be sure to label our number line. So we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. Alright, so here's my number line. Again, we have to determine if it's an open or a closed circle, and this one does not have the equal to line under it, so we're going to do an open circle at 3. Okay, last thing that we're doing is we're plugging in 0 for x and determining which direction our line goes. So we've got 0 is greater than 3, which is false, so we don't want to include 0. We want to include the numbers that are bigger than 3, which is 4, 5, 6, all that stuff. Keep going up. Alright, so there's our basic. There's our addition and subtraction inverse operations. Well, let's talk about the next part. And at this bottom part, you can see this is super duper important. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. Okay, you have to. Okay, so if we do the next problem, we can see that we've got a negative 2x is greater than 12. Okay, well, to get rid of that 12, or to get rid of that negative 2, we have to divide. So we're dividing by negative 2 on both sides. And because we did that, we have to flip that inequality sign. So we have our x still. We're flipping the inequality sign, meaning it's going to face the other direction. And now we're doing 12 divided by negative 2, which is negative 6. So here's our inequality. Let's transfer that to the number line. So let's go ahead and label it. We'll start 0 over here. We got 1, 0, and then we got negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9. Okay, so there's my number line. Well, if we look at it, we see that we don't have the equal to sign under it, so it's going to be an open circle at negative 6. Well, let's plug in 0. We've got 0 is less than negative 6. That is false. So we do not want to include 0 in this number line. We want to go away from 0. We want to include the numbers that are smaller than -6. Okay, so there's our inequality. Well, let's just practice some interval notation while we're here. Okay, so remember we've got negative infinity on this side, infinity on this side. Well, we can see our line is going in that negative infinity direction, and that's always with a parenthesis. And we can see that this line goes all the way to -6. And it also has that open circle, which is a parenthesis. Okay? Sorry if that color is a little hard for you guys to see, but there's our interval notation, and there's our graph to explain this answer. Okay, well, let's go on to our next page. We've got about 5 examples on this one. Shouldn't take us too long. All right, so if we have number 1, we have x divided by 3. Well, remember, we have to do inverse operations to be able to solve this stuff. So if I have a divide by 3, I need to multiply by 3 on both sides to cancel this out and get x by itself. So when I multiply by 3 on this side, my x's cancel, or my 3's cancel out. I have x left over. My inequality sign comes down, and I've got -2 times 3, which gives me a -6. Okay, well, let's go ahead and transfer that on to our number line. So I've got, let's do 0, 1, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9. Alright, so there's my number line. Well, again, this doesn't have a equal to sign under it, so it's just an open circle at -6. And we can see that if we plug in 0, we got 0 is less than -6, which is false, so I want to include numbers that are smaller than -6. That was pretty similar to our last one. The only difference was the solving. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to our second equation. So if I've got 10 is greater than x minus 3, I need to get rid of that -3 so I can get x by itself. So in order to get rid of that -3, I need to add 3 on both sides. So plus 3 on both sides. So I have 13 is greater than or equal to x. Okay, because these cancel out. Let's go ahead and fill this out in our number line. So because it is 13, let's just start with 13 in the middle. Remember, we're going 14, 15, 16, 17. We've got 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. So here's our number line. And be sure, guys, that you are labeling these number lines, because if you don't, points will be taken off. We need to know what your number line means. If you have no numbers on it, it means nothing to us. Okay? So we've got our number line, and we see that it's going to be a closed circle, because it has that line under it. Well, let's go ahead and plug in 0. I've got 13 is greater than or equal to 0, which is true, okay, because 13 is bigger. So you want to include 0. You want to go in the direction of 0, all the numbers that are less than 13. All right, so there's that problem. Let's go on to our third one. All right, so when we look at this one, we've got a negative x divided by 2 is less than 7. Okay, so our goal is to get rid of that divided by 2. And we also want to get rid of that negative, so let's just treat that negative's down with the negative, or with that 2. So if it's dividing, we know that we have to multiply both sides by -2 in order for them to cancel out. So on this side, my -2's cancel out. I have x left over. And keep in mind, anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip that inequality sign. So we flip the direction of that inequality sign, and 7 times -2 gives me a -14. Okay, so there's our answer. Now we need to transfer that to our graph. All right, so we've got -14. We've got -13, -12, -10, or 11, -10. Okay, we got -15 on this side, and so on. You guys know how to fill in this stuff, so I'm not going to keep going on. I'm just going to do a couple of them so you can see. So we've got a closed circle at -14, and 0 is bigger than -14. So it wants to go towards 0. It wants to include numbers that are bigger than -14. All right, number 4. We've got Negative 3w is greater than 3. So if that negative 3 is multiplying w, we want to do the opposite, which is divide. So we're going to divide by negative 3 on both sides. Alright, so we've got w. And remember, what do we do next? We divided by a negative. What do? We flip the sign. Okay, and 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. So what I want you guys to do now is I want you to pause it. And I want you to graph this inequality by yourself. And then once you're finished, push play, and we can finish this video. Alright guys, you can see the answer up here if you're looking for it. And then now let's go ahead and do this last problem, which is a word problem. So you want to get some money in your pocket, so you decide to walk some dogs in your neighborhood after school. You earn $4.50 per dog, and your goal is to make at least 75. At least 75. So this is how we're going to set it up. We know that you've got $4.50 per dog. Okay, and X is the dogs you have to walk. This is the amount of dogs. And we know you want to make at least $75. So that means that this number could be bigger than 75. So we've got our 75 here. Okay, next thing we got to do is solve it. We already did the setup. Let's solve. We've got 450 times x, so we have to divide on both sides by 450. So we have x left over. We've got our greater than or equal to sign. And then we know that 75 divided by 4.5 gets us about, 16.6667, whatever. So let's round that up, because you can't have a 0.6 of a dog. So let's say you got to walk 17 dogs, at least 17 dogs. So remember, that's going to be our closed circle at 17. And keep in mind, x is greater than 17. So that means those are numbers bigger than 17 that have to be included in your line, like 18, 19, 20, 21. So all of those amount of dogs will get you more than $75 a week. So hopefully you're making money if you're walking those dogs. Okay, so we're done with today's lesson. So be sure to go back to our front, cross off lesson 4. Thank you very much. I love you.